just starting to understand what this has to do with it. So that's what I'm working on. And Nick, your resume is 3.5 miles long. You are central casting for a Silicon Valley executive. As a matter of fact, was Silicon Valley written for you or about you? I'm not sure. It
Yeah,
seems.
totally. I was the cheesiest, most annoying guy in the show. What was it? What was that guy's name? I'm that guy. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, no, totally. I mean, when you said stereotype of Valley executives, I was like, that's definitely not a compliment. But no, just kidding.
I'm glad you say that. But anything else you wanted to mention about your background? I know you're the CEO of Gainsight, which is a bona fide unicorn, I think, at this point. But anything else you want to mention about yourself in context of this conversation?
No, I'm just absolutely obsessed with AI in a way that's probably beyond healthy. So I'm happy to talk about any of this stuff.
So we're focused here on customer service roles within AI, and specifically around your company does a lot of work with that. So I'll kind of jump in with the first question and just ask you, how is AI transforming the day-to-day work of CSMs right now? Given today's technology, I think it'd be interesting to kind of focus on that first. And then how is it changing, the skills and the types of things you're looking for in CS people right now?
Absolutely. So the first one, we can definitely dive into this more. We're definitely at the center of all this because we're just obsessed with it, meet every company all the time, but also doing a lot in our own technology stack around helping people use AI in driving value for their customers as well as a better experience for their employees. And one way I think about where it's happening today and where it's like coming, a simple like 2 by 2 matrix, right? So one axis is this a technology AI usage for internal productivity and effectiveness, meaning employees using internally, or is it something people are exposing to their customers? And then the second is it a mature use case or is it more of an emerging, which is what you were alluding to? So just to give you some examples from each of those. So a mature internal use case, obviously, write me an email, summarize this document, things like that, right? Those are like very straightforward. One that's I think becoming more and more mature, and I would argue the most valuable thing in probably business, but all in usage of AI, but also I'd argue even as individuals is deep research, which is a feature available in OpenAI Pro as well as in Gemini and maybe some others as well. And it's an agent that you'll go in instead of like the traditional query response of like a OpenAI 4.0 or O3, it's a longer running agent, it'll run for a few hours, and you can go and give it an open-ended research task. So for example, one thing, like an example of something that one of our CSMs used. He said, okay, here's a document of our product functionality. Here's a document of what the client said their goals are. The client had given us like a very detailed presentation of their goals. And I want you to go on the web, look at all the information about this client, news, et cetera. I want you to look at these documents. I'm going to think about it for a while, come back to me with an integrated document, how we should pitch our value to this client. And it was awesome. And it took, it was just like something somebody would have spent all this time and not done nearly as well. So that's an example of an internal, more and more mature use case. And then the internal, more emerging use cases
Hey, Nick, can
largely,
I stop you there for I just want to question you on that
yeah,
last point.
okay.
Do you think that this puts McKinsey out of business?
I had lunch with the partner of not McKinsey, but another big one of the other big ones. And he's like, no, I don't think it does. I think what it does though is it makes it so the work that analysts would do doesn't need to be nearly as much. That's what an analyst would do. But nobody hires McKinsey to get that report, then they want to talk to that partner.
Right.
But now what's interesting is I can imagine a world where there's some challenges to this world, which I'll describe, but where you're like McKinsey or Bain or BCG or whoever has senior people and just way less junior people, and the client mainly is interacting with the senior people because all that administrative stuff is done by AI. There's a big
Right.
problem, which is, well, then who are the future senior people? Because all the senior people used to be junior people, so that's a different problem. And I think Brett was alluding to this a little bit. And on that internal use case, what's interesting, the more mature internal, the writing of content, the research, etc. What today most people are just using the LLMs themselves, right? Like individuals are just in companies using them and doing awesome things with them. But what's interesting is like all of the products people are using are building them into them. Think about like when you're on a Zoom meeting and now you have like transcription and follow-up tasks and recommendations in the sidebar and catch me up on the meeting. And you could, before there used to be apps that you would use to do those things, and now it's just built into Zoom. So for example, Gainsight now, our products have all the email writing, summarization, all that built in. None of that is novel. I mean, God, like that's like so obvious now, but it's just
Right.
built into your workflow. And so I think some of the internal AI usage is going to eventually, like as it matures, it gravitates into the products people use already versus the emerging ones where you're seeking out new technologies or you're using the LLMs creatively yourself. So, as an example, like we bought a company that's called Staircase, and it's essentially like uses LLMs to analyze all your communication with your customers and pull out all this information about like who they are and where there's risk and all this. It's really cool. And that was a startup and we bought it. And now it's just going to be part of our product. So it's just going to be like more mature as it goes. And so I think there's a lot of emerging internal use cases that largely about analyzing data because we all know like LLM's first class job is, language, right? Large language model, but they're getting better at analysis. Most of you hopefully tried like, I've got a spreadsheet, help me figure out the meaning of this. Or like something that happens all the time to me now is I'm in an internal meeting and somebody is presenting a slide that was so poorly designed and I don't understand the graph at all because the axes aren't labeled. And I just take a picture and I just give it to ChatGPT and say, what is happening here? And it gives me the full analysis, right? And so I think there's these emerging use cases that over time become more mature. So there's a flow, right? Things start out new and novel. And November 30th, 2022, or whatever, ChatGPT came out. And it was super novel to be like, finish this sentence. And now it's like, no, that's like so easy, right?
Right.
But it flows in as it matures, it gets built into the existing products people have. I think people are going to constantly now be iterating, trying new things, and then hoping they merge in. Now, then there's the external side where more and more mature use case is I'm going to give my customer some more self-service capability through AI, self-service chat, instead of searching a documentation site, just ask a question like you would ChatGPT, stuff like that, right? Gainsight makes some products there, and there's other one out there. And then the emerging customer-facing use case, meaning like you're giving it to your customer, is all the agentic workflows. So like, we have our conference in 3 weeks, and we have this like agentic workflow around automating the entire process of driving a renewal for a company. Like the renewals, like you have to like communicate with your customer and get some information, and great use case for an agent. And so we actually are using Microsoft's Agent Foundry, and we built this super awesome agent that does that. But those are emerging. Like that agent we have is an alpha. It's not like totally mature yet, but it's real. And so I think we're going to have that world where there's always emerging technology, and it just will flow in over time into the mainstream products. But it'll start out as these research projects, and that's why you see companies doing so many proofs of concept on these emerging technologies.